I am excited to have you on. You and I were talking earlier this afternoon, and there was something came on Fox News this morning that caught your ear and your eyes. What was Steve Doocy talking about this morning?
Yeah, this was actually happened last week. One of the contributors to the PNN network, Sharon Rondo, she wrote an article last week, and she sent it to us for consideration. The title of the article was, by the way, this is at thepostemail.com, thepostemail.com. For a second time, Fox and Friends declares baby Sussex, you know the baby born to the royal family recently in England there, that this baby, they don't have a name yet, so they're calling it baby Sussex. They may have a name as of the beginning of this show today. I don't know. I'm not really much of an Anglophile, but they were calling it last week baby Sussex, okay? Now, Fox and Friends, they declared for the second time that baby Sussex is eligible for the presidency. Yeah, I just said that right. This baby, born in England to the royal family, is eligible to be president of Nicaragua? No. Of Canada? No. Of the United States of America, without even mentioning the natural-born requirement, by the way. Shortly after 7:30 a.m. Wednesday, the co-host of Fox and Friends announced an on-camera appearance of Prince Harry and his wife, Meghan Markle, now known as the Duchess of Sussex, introducing their newborn child to the world, okay? Prince Harry was holding the child, a boy wrapped in a white blanket and cap, born early Monday morning of last week, while Markle, dressed in white, stood next to her husband, both smiling broadly. Both spoke briefly to the public before retreating behind an ornate golden door said to be a section of the castle where they reside. The baby is yet unnamed. As of last week, co-host Steve Doocy said, you're not going to believe this, Nick. This is really unbelievable. Co-host Steve Doocy said, and is currently referred to as baby Sussex. The name Spencer is reportedly under consideration given that it was the maiden name of Princess Diana, Harry's mother. As was stated on the show Tuesday morning, Doocy declared that because the baby is presumed to have been born with dual U.S.-UK citizenship, Nick, he could grow up to be King of England. Check this out. He could either grow up to be the King of England or President of the United States. This is what Doocy said on Fox and Friends that morning. Isn't this exactly, Nick, why the framers put in the U.S. Constitution that the United States president must be natural-born citizen, not a citizen of the United States, not a landed immigrant who became citizen of the United States, natural-born citizen of the United States, is to avoid split allegiances, right? And so now Doocy says this is a prime quintessential example of the vastness of the ignorance that surrounds this topic, Nick. I mean, even these guys who are major hosts of a major news network in the United States, you can see this happening perhaps on a tertiary network somewhere in the Arctic in Norway that they might make this mistake. But for this to happen on Fox News by this Doocy fellow who's a major name at Fox News to declare that he could be either King of England or President of the United States. Now, co-host Ainsley Earhart, she tries to butt in here and say, wait a minute. She says, quote, doesn't he have to be? And then Doocy cuts her off. He says, I don't know exactly. I'm just repeating the factoid we had on the show, Doocy responded to Earhart, referring to Tuesday's broadcast. And then Earhart says, well, we'll have to look into that because I'm curious. Now, she's trying to keep harmony between the two. I think she may know that this is totally not right. And, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5 of the U.S. Constitution clearly states that no person except a natural-born citizen or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution. So because when the Constitution was adopted, there were no natural-born citizens, everybody was an immigrant, right?
Right.
At the time of the adoption of the Constitution, shall be eligible to the office of the President, neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not have attained the age of 35 years and be 14 years a resident within the United States, okay? So clearly, this baby is not eligible to be president. But you know what? That's not so clear to a great many people, including some bigger names that I'll get to in a second. But the U.S. Constitution was finalized after then Founding Father John Jay wrote a letter to the Constitutional Convention President George Washington stating, permit me to hint whether it be not wise and seasonable to provide a strong check to the admission of foreigners into the administration of our national government, and to declare expressly that the Commander-in-Chief of the American Army shall not be given to nor devolved on any but a natural-born citizen. Now, when the natural-born citizen term, back then it was not precisely defined by the framers, sadly. Historical texts in Supreme Court cases indicate that a child born in the United States to U.S. citizen parents, plural, was undoubtedly in that category. The president shall not have fractured loyalty. Constitutional scholar, attorney, educator Chrisanne Hall, who has been a guest on Fox News, has said on her radio show, a number of constitutional scholars, Nick, have posited in relation to what they believe the framers were thinking, that when the new nation was formed after the Revolutionary War, there were no natural-born citizens. Rather, there were only those who, having risked their own lives, those of their own families, and all of their possessions, declared themselves independent of the British Crown and fought in the war or participated in drawing up its founding documents. Therefore, although not natural-born because of their original allegiance, they were new American citizens because of their new allegiance to the nation they helped found. Now, I just want to jump through this article a little bit here. The framers specifically spurned royalty, and General George Washington, who became the nation's first president, refused to take on the stature of king. And here we have Ducey saying that baby Sussex could either be King of England or President of the United States. The whole thing is just, it's so absurd, it's unbelievable. I'll finish up this article with this, then I'll move on to my main point here. Some have argued that the 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, supplanted the natural-born citizen requirement, although its principal author, Senator John Bingham of Ohio, stated of an American citizen in prison in Spain, that Dr. Howard is a natural-born citizen of the United States. There is not room for the shadow of a doubt. He was born of naturalized parents within the jurisdiction of the United States, and by the express words of the Constitution, as amended today, he is declared to all the world to be a citizen of the United States by birth. Neither Ducey nor the other two co-hosts invoked the term national-born citizen during the brief discussion of baby Sussex's assumed presidential eligibility. And let me tell you why I think this is. Now, this is all speculation on my point, but I got to thinking after I read that last sentence, could this have something to do with Ted Cruz? Could this be because Fox News was so in bed with the Ted Cruz nomination, getting that forward back in 2016? And so I thought, well, let's just do some Google. Let's do some research here. So I Googled Ted Cruz 2024, Now, I would challenge the audience to do the same, It's unbelievable what you turn up here, because here we have multiple Facebook pages, Nick, have already erupted on Facebook pushing a Ted Cruz nomination in 2024 with not 100 likes or 1,000, tens of thousands of people are already jumping on board the Ted Cruz run for president in 2024. This is absolutely crazy. In fact, Judge Napolitano said back in January of 2016 he was a solidly in favor of a Ted Cruz nomination because he came out ahead of this whole natural-born citizen thing with respect to Ted Cruz, and he said, look, legal precedent is solidly on Senator Ted Cruz's side on the natural-born issue. And he was a rabid Ted Cruz supporter, so were many talk show hosts, but Fox News firmly in bed with a Ted Cruz nomination. And I just think, you know what, wait a minute. Has Ted Cruz unofficially launched his 2024 bid for the White House? I think it's entirely possible. And then when you go back in the Wayback Machine, you find it. Now check this out. This is very telling. This is an article from May 3rd, 2016. This is at Wall Street Daily by Martin Hutchinson. And the title of his article, Nick, is Ted Cruz likely to be future Republican nominee. It's unbelievable. He says it doesn't look like Ted Cruz will win the Republican nomination this year, and if he loses the Indiana primary, he almost certainly won't. So it's basically a Trump-Cruz horse race here. Yet he's advanced from the back of the pack to become the strongest second-place finisher since Ronald Reagan, and he does use Ronald Reagan as an example. He didn't win his first time out, right?
Right.
He won in 1980. 4 years after he lost in 1976. And George H.W. Bush had a similar situation. Bob Dole won the nomination in 96, having been Bush's runner-up in 1988. and John McCain, and then finally Mitt Romney won the nomination in 2012, having been McCain's runner-up in 2008. So he's giving this list of runner-ups who eventually went on to win nominations, and he says there's only a few counterexamples. But then he says that that if the 2016 race comes down to Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, which we now know it did, Cruz will be in a good position to gain the Republican nomination and perhaps the presidency in either 2020 or 2024. And that's why we see Ted Cruz is keeping his powder dry on many of the big topic issues. He doesn't want to have all the sound bites out there, that people can use in 2024. And I think we're looking at, and I don't know, you and I don't know each other very well. I got a pretty good track record on these predictions. I think Ted Cruz, we're going to see his name come up in 2024. He's going to maybe perhaps run against Pence. I don't know. Look for him in 2024 to be a nominee for the Republican nomination.
Interesting. Now, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about, because there is some question about his eligibility, and that came up in this last time. You mentioned, you kind of briefly touched on it. We'll get back to that and some other things from Mike
Sure.
Right after these breaks. Listen, there's a lot going on today. Stick around. We've got more from Mike Shoesmith and more on Freedom Friday. This is Nick Stewart in for Carl Gallups. We'll be right back. You're listening to Talk Radio 1330 WEBY FM 99.1.
Welcome back to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. Sit down, buckle up, and hang on.
All right, it's 10 minutes till the top of the hour. We got Mike Shoesmith on the line, and we've been talking about being eligible to run for president and some of the different things that have been going on. We talk about Ted Cruz. So, Mike, let's continue on where we left off. So what are the problems that we have with Ted Cruz's potential run for the presidency?
Well, let me back up a little bit. In 2008, I wrote a book called Politics as Usual, wherein I detailed the evidence that supported my theory that Senator McCain took a dive for Obama. And I won't go into all that evidence right now, but at the time I was invited on to Mark Levin's show because Mark Levin was a rabid John McCain supporter back in 2008. Mm-hmm. And once my book got out, I was invited on his show. And I don't know what Mark Levin is like now, if he's toned his mannerisms down at all. But back then, he was a very angry troll living under a bridge. Whenever he got somebody on his show that he disagreed with, he just launched ad hominem after ad hominem at them until they broke down crying in his studio, and then he kicked them off the phone. And that's what he was like. And I said, look, I'm not gonna subject myself to your cruelty here. I mean, I've made my case in the book. If you disagree, that's fine. If you don't like what I said, write something to counter my argument, basically. So back in 2016, Mark Levin was a rabid Ted Cruz supporter. And he went after the birther movement with respect to Ted Cruz with a vengeance. The vitriol was scorching coming from Mark Levin. And after Ted Cruz lost the nomination, Mark Levin actually, I don't know if you heard this or not, but Mark Levin launched an attempt to gather up a convention of states, a constitutional convention of states, in order to firm up the language of the Constitution. Because the Constitution, in his mind, is so vague that all of these quote unquote morons out there were trying to say that Ted Cruz was not eligible to be president. Why? Well, because Ted Cruz not only was not born to two U.S. parents, okay, he was born in Calgary, Alberta, and has a Canadian birth certificate. Ted Cruz, much like baby Sussex, qualified to be Prime Minister of Canada. He met all of the qualifications to be the Prime Minister of Canada, and in fact, when this all leaked out, he ended up officially renouncing his what? His Canadian citizenship.
Exactly.
I mean, Ted Cruz would be in clear violation of the spirit behind the natural born citizenship clause, which is no split allegiances. And let me tell you something, Nick. Somebody who has a Canadian birth certificate, born in Canada, and is eligible to run for the Prime Minister of Canada clearly has a split allegiance problem, which is what the framers of the U.S. Constitution were trying to say, no, we cannot have this in our country. You must be natural born, which means born to two U.S. parents, on U.S. soil. And it's that simple. It's that clear.
Now, are
So
they?
I don't know how far, Mark. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask: is that the point? Is that the goal? Is to have a split allegiance?
Well, clearly, I mean, when you look at the court cases around it and the writings of the founders, okay, the extra constitutional writings of the founders, that's the clear language they present.
Yeah.
And if you go to the postemail.com, clearly I barely put a dent in that article written by Sharon Rondo. She quotes the framers several times, showing that this was the intent behind the natural born citizenship clause. We don't want split allegiances, people who don't have full 100% allegiance. This is why Marco Rubio wasn't eligible to run for president either.
Well,
because both of his parents were not born in the United States.
Yeah. No, but my question, Mike, is this the purpose of this branch or this group to force a split allegiance in the presidency?
I think they look at somebody like a Donald Trump, who's coarse, he's rash, he's not refined and dignified as they would like him to be. You know, they look at his tweets and everything else, and his perhaps pastime womanizing and misogynism, and they think we can do better. We can get somebody from the deep state inside, an insider that can push the agenda forward in a way that we're comfortable with. We're very uncomfortable with Ted Cruz or Donald Trump, Nick. We're very
I understand.
uncomfortable with him. We don't like him. We got to get an insider in, somebody who's, born and bred for politics, and somebody that maybe, I don't know, somebody who maybe we can manipulate.
Yeah.
Somebody that we can control. And I think that's what this is all about. And so people like Mark Levin, they want to broaden the field to include people that, are borderline eligible. Well, Carl Gallups, Mike Zullo, Mike Shoesmith, Sharon Rondo, we've all made the case. None of these people are eligible. And guess what? Donald Trump has been the best thing to happen to this country since Ronald Reagan.
And you brought it up.
I mean, what's the damage here?
Yeah, you brought it up. I think the main thing is they can't control him. He is his own man, and they have no control over him, and that scares them to death.
Yeah, there's no question in my mind this is all about control from powers that want puppets in the White House, in government. And, I mean, we have that. Listen, if you guys don't take a solid, firm stand against that, you're going to end up like Canada. Canada is a puppet country, socialist, communist. There is no distinction between socialism and communism when you look at the writings of Karl Marx.
Right.
So Canada is a communist country, controls wages and health care and everything else. If you guys don't take a solid stand against this broadening of the Constitution, I mean, look at the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment says there shall be no infringements against the rights of American citizens to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Okay? Very clear language.
Yep.
But what does the word infringe mean? The word infringe means restricted in any way, Nick. That's what the word infringe means. Any restrictions at all is an infringement against the rights of Americans to keep and bear arms. And look at all the infringement. Look at all the restrictions you have now, because when this ball started rolling as a little pebble down the top of the mountain, nobody put their foot in front of it, which is all it would have taken to stop it. Now it's an enormous, gigantic boulder that's going to take a nuclear device to stop.
Yeah.
That's what this is. That's where America is now. And Canada used to have similar rights to bear arms, religious rights, which are all but gone in Canada now. There was a street preacher locked up and fined $50,000 in Canada a month ago for refusing to say opposite pronouns for people who were born. Okay, so someone's born female and identifies as male. He kept referring in public to that person as female, and he was locked up and charged $50,000.
Yeah.
This is a speech issue. He didn't attack anybody. All he did was use proper pronouns that were assigned to them at birth by their chromosomes. And we could talk about that after the break if I'm staying on.
Yes.
But, I mean, this is where Canada is. If the United States does not put a stop to this now, it's not going to look good 20 years from now.
You are correct. All right, hold on. We've got more from Mike Shoesmith. I'm glad he's going to stick around. We've got more. We're going to talk about the gender identity problem coming up in just a moment. News is next, and you're listening to Freedom Friday. This is Nick Stewart in for Carl Gallups. Good Friday afternoon. It's a beautiful day here in Northwest Florida. Thank you for listening. We'll be right back. You're listening to Talk Radio 1330 WEBY FM 99.1.
Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon has died, aged 80.
We are with one of Rabbi Kaduri's disciples.
הצלחה רבה, והצלחה רבה ומהירה, שתוך ביאת משיח צדקנו בקרוב ממש, ואז ישפיע זה על כל כדור הארץ. אנחנו להשם שמע, דין השם כדורים,